That it's time now for a very special guest on CNBC TV 18 as we approach the auspicious festive season. Will the festive cheer brighten up the stock market as well? CNBC TV 18 Sonia Shenoy is in a conversation with Shankar Sharma of First Global. Over to you, Sonia.
Hello and welcome to Samvat Market Masters. My guest today is someone who needs absolutely no introduction at all. Someone who has a very unconventional mind and says what he thinks. I have with me here Shankar Sharma. Shankar, hi. Happy Diwali to you and your entire team in advance.
Sure, thanks.
How festive are you feeling this Diwali?
Feeling quite festive.
About the market?
Yeah, I think we are in good shape globally for emerging markets, and within emerging markets, India has been a steady one. I mean, it's not been as spectacular as, let's say, a Brazil or a Russia, but, you know, we'll take what we are getting.
Okay, so between last Samvat and now, the market has risen about 10-odd%. Between this Samvat and next, what's the forecast?
I'm optimistic. I think we might beat the 10% of last year.
Okay, we might beat the 10%, but you're not worried about the kind of FI selling that we've seen? I mean, over the last 4 days, of course, barring yesterday, last 4 days we've seen, what, some 3,000 crores getting pulled out. That doesn't concern you?
Sonia, I mean, if you start getting into this much of micro, you know, which, I mean, of course, you have to, you know, it's good headline. I don't think it determines anything to do, you know, about market outcomes. Since we started in 94, there have been many days of outflows, many months of outflows. We are still up from where we were, you know, 25 years back.
That's true. You know, the big cue that we have, everyone's watching now, is the US elections. In your mind, is it a non-event for a normal Indian retail investor sitting here?
I think it has become a large event this time because of big commonality with Indian politics. So you have a sort of left of center candidate, you have a very extreme right of center candidate, which is exactly what we saw 2.5 years back. If you look at the utterances of each of the, you know, sort of, you know, candidates, they are very similar to what we have seen in India. You know, it's been almost uncanny how India has led the discourse of the US elections by nearly 2 years. So in anything, India doesn't lead other than, you know, politics, you know, this time. So in that sense, we have led America. So that's why we are getting more involved, because they are kind of reflective of the kind of politics we have seen in India too. Otherwise, you know, many elections have come and gone in the US, and I don't think we have ever been that engaged as to who wins. My gut feel is the Democrats will win, but, you know, you never know. The fact is that Trump is still in the race despite all these problems. So which, if we could liken him to a stock, that if despite so much bad news, the stock doesn't fall, you know, then maybe something is in there.
Okay.
So that's my, you know, the contra trade part of it.
So has the market factored in a Trump win? I mean, do you think
Which
that the
market?
market's good?
Which market?
Our own market?
I don't think our markets will be bothered much.
No?
I don't think so. I don't think it matters. I mean, you tell me, and if he wins or if he loses, or whoever wins or loses, I mean, how does it matter, really speaking?
So this is still a market that you buy into irrespective of what happens?
I would buy into, not blindly, because I think there is a lot of stresses in the large caps. Let's be very clear about it. So let's not be too rosy tinted for the large caps. And I think we all know the names where the problems exist. So you have IT in fair degree of stress. You have pharma in a fair degree of stress. You have even consumer companies, the levers in the ITCs undergoing a lot of stress. So I don't think large caps are a good spot to be in, barring the odd ones like Maruti and Tata Motors and all that. I think the real action in India is under the surface, which is your small cap segment. And I've said this many times the last 2 years, that is a segment where you really want to bet, and bet big.
But what kind of, sectors are you looking at right now? I know that you've been interested in a lot of beaten down companies that are perhaps going through turmoil of their own, some of the infrastructure sectors. But don't you think that at a volatile time like this, one should stick with, you know, the trusted war horses, some of the non-indexed large cap companies, or do you think that beaten down is the way to go?
That's my philosophy. I'm not saying it's for everybody. And remember, for the average retail guy to play that strategy is almost impossible. Because for that you need to know management. You have to be
holding power.
You have to have a tolerance for a lot of stress, because it's not easy to buy these and sleep peacefully. So it's not for everybody. It works for me most of the times. And if it doesn't work, at least the loss element, since they are so beaten down, right? You know, how much can you lose in them?
So what is Shankar Sharma buying these days?
I've started nibbling at a few. See, the problem with all these names is that it's very hard to buy and buy in size. So if you want to buy 10, 20, 50 crores of these kind of companies, I mean, the trading volumes are 2,000 shares a day or something. So you have to be very, very patient. So obviously one can't talk about what one is buying because, then obviously
Regulations come in.
regulations come into play and stock then goes up or something will happen and, you will yourself be unable to buy what you wanted to buy in the first place.
So I'll come to the small caps in a bit, but before that, you were the first to warn us about the disruptive forces hitting the technology space and the legacy business of these companies.
Yeah.
Do you think the IT story is over for the time being?
Look, I mean, my view as an Indian is that I hope it never gets over because I've seen these companies, I mean, their rise and their emergence is almost coincidental with, the stock market emergence in India back in the early 90s, right? They have crafted a whole consumer boom in India. I mean, your mobile phones or cars or eating out, cafes, have been driven largely by the IT pack, right? I mean, because they have thousands and lakhs of employees. They've created a whole consumer society in India. So it's not just about a few good companies. They have fashioned the modern India in that sense.
Yeah.
They've given the youth hope. When that starts to dissipate as it is, it's always painful. So for me as an Indian, it's very, very painful. That said, I think they have good managements. I think they have smart managements. I think they will find a way to remain afloat. But to expect them to go back to the mid-teens kind of number of growth, I think that's being unrealistic.
So you wouldn't touch any of the larger IT names now?
I would not. The short answer is I would not.
Not even mid-caps? Because some mid-caps are doing quite well.
Mid-caps are a different kettle of fish. Again, the same overall large caps have problems of growth. Small caps don't seem to be having that right now, which might well be true for IT as well.
In fact,